The alarm screamed through the corridors of the horizon's edge, pulling Commander Hyunwoo from his sleep. He rolled out of his bunk and grabbed his uniform, his hands moving automatically after 15 years of military service. Around him, other crew members were doing the same, their faces tight with tension. "All officers to the bridge." Captain Myung's voice came through the intercom. "We have contact." Hyunwoo ran down the metal hallway, his boots clanging against the floor. The horizon's edge was a small ship, designed for watching distant space and collecting information. It was not built for fighting. When he reached the bridge, he saw Myung standing in front of the main screen, her short black hair catching the light from the displays around her. "Show me," she said to the crew member at the sensor station. The main screen lit up with dozens of red dots. Each dot represented a ship. Hyunwoo felt his stomach drop. He had never seen so many ships in one place before. "They're Velthron," Myung said quietly. The reports were true. For the past 3 months, humanity had been receiving desperate messages from other species across the galaxy. The messages all told the same story. A powerful alien race called the Velthrons had been conquering worlds. They moved from system to system and no one could stop them. 73 different civilizations had fallen to them. Some fought back. Some tried to negotiate. Some surrendered immediately. The result was always the same. The Velthrons won. "How long until they reach the Centauri colonies?" Hyunwoo asked. "At their current speed, 4 days," replied the navigation officer. Myung turned to face her crew. Her face was calm, but Hyunwoo could see the worry in her eyes. He had served with her for 8 years and knew her well. "Send everything we have to Mars Command," she ordered. "Full sensor data, ship configurations, everything. Then prepare to jump to hyperspace." "Captain, we should stay and observe," Hyunwoo said. "We need more information about their weapons and tactics." "We stay, we die," Myung replied. "And then nobody gets the information. We leave now." She was right, and Hyunwoo knew it. The horizon's edge was no match for even one Velthron warship, let alone an entire fleet. But as he watched the red dots on the screen, moving steadily toward human space, he felt something cold settle in his chest. Fear, yes, but also anger. The jump to hyperspace took them away from the Veltron fleet, but it did not take them away from the problem. When they arrived at Mars 3 days later, they found the orbital stations buzzing with activity. Ships were being loaded with supplies. Weapons were being mounted. Families were being evacuated from the outer colonies. Admiral Junho called Myung and Hyunwoo to his office as soon as they docked. The admiral was a tall man with gray hair and scars on his face from an old battle. He had been in the military for 40 years and had fought in the Titan Rebellion and the Venus Wars. Now, he stood in front of a huge display showing the entire Sol system. "Tell me what you saw," he said. Myung pulled up the sensor data on the admiral's screen. 247 capital ships, Admiral. Maybe 3 times that many support vessels. Their formation is tight and organized. They're not rushing. They know no one can stop them. Junho nodded slowly. "We've been studying the records from other species. The Velthrons have a pattern. They arrive in orbit around a planet. They demonstrate their weapons by destroying a few satellites or empty stations. Then they broadcast a surrender demand. Most species give up within hours. And if they don't surrender?" Hyunwoo asked. "Then the Velthrons destroy their defensive fleet in minutes and bomb their cities until they do surrender," Junho said. His voice was flat and hard. "They have weapons that pass through shields. Energy weapons that can cut through our best armor like it's paper. They haven't lost a single battle in 20 years. The room was silent for a moment. Hyunwoo looked at the display, at the blue dot representing Earth, at the red dot showing where the Velthron fleet was right now. "We can't beat them," Myung said. It was not a question. "In a straight fight?" "No," Junho admitted. "Their technology is better than ours. But I've been reading something interesting in these reports." He pulled up a file on the screen. Every species the Velthrons conquered had one thing in common. They were peaceful. Most of them had stopped fighting wars centuries ago. They had no military tradition, no experience with real combat. "And we do," Hyunwoo said, understanding. "Humanity has been fighting wars since we lived in caves," Junho said. "We've spent thousands of years learning how to kill each other. We know strategy, tactics, deception. We know how to fight when we're outnumbered and outgunned." He looked at them both. "The Velthrons have never faced an enemy like us." "That might not be enough," Myung said. "It might not be," Junho agreed. "But it's what we have. The Terran Council is meeting now to decide our response. Some want to evacuate Earth, Some want to surrender and hope for mercy, but I think we should fight. Hyunwoo thought about his family back on Earth, his sister, her 2 children, his parents in their small house by the ocean. He thought about giving them up to alien conquerors who had crushed 73 other worlds. "I'm with you, Admiral," he said. "As am I," Myung added. Junho smiled, but it was not a happy smile. "Good, because I'm putting together a special task force. Captain Myung, you'll command one of the carrier groups. Commander Hyunwoo, you'll be in charge of tactical planning. We have 2 weeks before they reach our space. We need to be ready." Over the next 12 days, the Sol system transformed into a fortress. Ships that had been patrolling distant space returned home. Weapons factories on the moon worked day and night. The military called up reserves, and millions of men and women reported for duty. Hyunwoo spent those days studying every piece of information they had about the Veltrons. He watched videos of their battles. He read reports from survivors. He analyzed their tactics until his eyes burned and his head ached. And slowly, he began to see something. The Veltrons were powerful, but they were also predictable. They used the same approach every time. They relied on their superior technology and expected their enemies to be afraid. They had never needed to be clever or creative because they had never needed to be. On the 13th day, the Veltron fleet reached the edge of the Sol system. They stopped at the Kuiper Belt and sent their first message to Earth. Hyunwoo watched it on the screen in the command center, surrounded by dozens of other officers. A Veltron appeared on the screen. It was tall and thin, with gray skin and large black eyes. When it spoke, the computer translated its words into human language. "We are the Veltron Empire. We have conquered 73 worlds. Your resistance is meaningless. Surrender now and you will be allowed to live under our rule. Refuse and you will be destroyed. You have 24 hours to respond." The message ended. Admiral Junho looked around the command center at all the faces watching him. "Send our response," he said quietly. On every screen, on every ship, on every station, the same message appeared. Just 2 words in simple text: "Come and take it." Dr. Yoonji stared at the holographic display in her lab on Mars Orbital Command. Around her, screens showed images of different alien species. The Keltorians, who had surrendered after seeing just 3 Veltron ships. The Praxians, whose entire defense fleet was destroyed in 18 minutes. The Yoltine Collective, who tried to negotiate and were enslaved anyway. "They're all the same," she muttered to herself. "What's that?" asked her assistant, a young woman named Somin who had been helping her research Veltron behavior patterns. "All the species the Veltrons conquered," Yoonji said, pointing at the screens. "Look at their histories. The Keltorians had their last war 400 years ago. The Praxians, 600 years. The Yoltime haven't had a military conflict in over 1,000 years," Somin frowned. "So they were peaceful. That's good, right?" "It's good for them, bad for fighting Veltrons," Yoonji replied. She pulled up another display, this one showing human history. Wars, battles, conflicts stretching back thousands of years. We're different. Humans have never stopped fighting. Even now, with one government, we still have military exercises, war games, combat training. We remember how to fight because we've never forgotten. You think that gives us an advantage? I think it means we understand something the Veltrons don't expect," Yoonji said. "Violence. Real, brutal, desperate violence. Every other species they conquered had evolved past that. We haven't." She sent her report to Admiral Junho's staff and hoped someone would read it. Then she went back to studying the intercepted Veltron communications that Somin had been decoding. Across the station, in one of the massive hangars, Lieutenant Jinwoo was explaining his plan to his squadron. 15 pilots sat in front of him, all of them young, all of them afraid but trying not to show it. "The Veltrons fight at long range," Jinwoo said, pacing back and forth. "Their weapons are powerful, but they're used to enemies who keep their distance. We're not going to do that." He pulled up a tactical display showing a standard Veltron engagement. The alien ships would sit back and fire their energy weapons, destroying enemy vessels before they could get close. "We're going to get right on top of them," Jinwoo continued. "Close enough to touch them. At that range, their big guns can't track us. Their targeting systems aren't designed for close combat because nobody has ever been crazy enough to try it." One of the pilots, a man named Taehyun, raised his hand. "Lieutenant, that's suicide. We'd have to fly through their weapons fire to get that close." "Yes," Jinwoo said simply. "Some of us won't make it, but the ones who do will tear them apart." He looked at each pilot in turn. I'm not going to lie to you. This is dangerous. But if we fight them the way they expect, we'll lose for sure. If we do something they've never seen before, we have a chance. The pilots were quiet. Then Taehyun stood up. When do we start training? Right now, Jinwoo said and smiled. In the weapons development section of the station, Chief Engineer Daeho was having the best day of his life. For 3 years, he had been working on a project that everyone said was outdated and useless. Railguns. Simple weapons that used magnetic force to shoot metal slugs at incredible speeds. The military had stopped using them decades ago because energy shields could block them. But Velthron shields were different. Daeho had studied the sensor data from Hyunwoo's reconnaissance mission. The Velthron shields worked by deflecting energy. They could stop lasers, plasma bolts, anything that used energy as a weapon, but kinetic weapons, simple metal moving very fast, passed right through. It's like they never considered it, Daeho said to his team. Every species they fought used energy weapons because they're more efficient and cleaner. Nobody uses old-fashioned projectile weapons anymore. Except us, said one of his engineers. Except us, Daeho agreed. And we're going to put railguns on every ship we have. The work was exhausting. They had to retrofit hundreds of ships with the new weapons in just days. Daeho barely slept. He drank coffee until his hands shook and then drank more. But slowly, the fleet was transforming into something the Velthrons had never encountered. On the 10th day, Admiral Junho called a meeting of all senior officers. Captain Myung attended, along with Hyunwoo, who had been promoted to captain of his own ship, the Defiant. The conference room was packed with more than 50 officers, all of them looking tired and worried. Junho stood at the front of the room, his expression serious. I've received the latest intelligence from our scouts. The Velthron fleet is advancing slowly, stopping to broadcast surrender demands to every station and colony they pass. They're giving people time to evacuate. They're being careful not to cause unnecessary casualties. That doesn't sound like conquerors, someone said. It's strategic, Hyunwoo spoke up. They want other species to see them as reasonable. Surrender and you'll be treated well. Fight and you'll be destroyed. It's worked for them 73 times. It's not going to work this time, Junho said. We have 3 advantages. First, Dr. Yoonji's research shows that we understand violence in a way other species don't. We're not afraid to get bloody. Second, Chief Engineer Daeho has equipped our fleet with weapons the Velthrons can't defend against. Third, Lieutenant Jinwoo's pilots are training in tactics the Velthrons have never seen. He pulled up a star map showing the outer Sol system. We're not going to meet them head-on. We're not going to line up our fleets and shoot at each other like it's some kind of formal duel. We're going to ambush them. The plan was risky. The human fleet would hide in the ice fields near Neptune, keeping their power signatures low so the Velthrons wouldn't detect them. When the enemy fleet passed by heading for Earth, the humans would attack from behind and the sides all at once. It's guerrilla warfare on a massive scale, Hyunwoo said. Hit them when they're not ready, hit them hard, then scatter before they can respond properly. Exactly, Junho said. The Velthrons expect us to either surrender or fight honorably. We're going to do neither. Myung looked at the plan, studying the details. Admiral, if this fails, they'll have a clear path to Earth. We'll have nothing left to stop them. If we fight them the traditional way, we'll lose for certain, Junho replied. This gives us a chance. Maybe our only chance, the officers voted. It was not unanimous, but the majority agreed. They would set the trap at Neptune. Over the next 3 days, the fleet moved into position. Hundreds of ships hiding among ice chunks the size of mountains. Their engines cold, their systems quiet. Soldiers sat in the dark waiting, thinking about home and family and whether they would live to see another sunrise. Someone continued, monitoring Velthron communications from her station on Mars. She had become very good at understanding their language. What she heard made her blood run cold. The Velthrons were confident. They talked about humanity the way someone might talk about an annoying insect. They joked about how quickly humans would surrender. They made bets about whether anyone would even try to fight. She sent her translations to Junho's command staff. She wanted them to know what they were facing. An enemy that didn't respect them. An enemy that thought victory was certain. In her lab, Dr. Yoonji finished her final report. She had analyzed every battle the Velthrons had fought. Their tactics never changed. They relied on overwhelming force and superior technology. They had never needed strategy or creativity. They're like a hammer, she wrote. Very good at smashing things. But what happens when the nail fights back? Jinwoo ran one last training exercise with his squadron. They flew their fighters through a simulated Velthron defense, getting as close as possible before releasing their weapons. 15 pilots started the simulation. Only 9 made it through. But those 9 destroyed the simulated Velthron ships. Good enough, Jinwoo said, though his heart hurt for the 6 pilots who wouldn't survive the real battle. Daeho checked every railgun personally. He walked through the hangars, inspecting weapons, talking to the gunners, making sure everyone understood how to use the new equipment. His feet ached and his eyes burned, but he didn't stop. On the morning of the 14th day, sensors detected the Velthron fleet approaching Neptune. Admiral Junho sat in his command chair aboard the Resolute, surrounded by displays showing the entire battlefield. Myung was out there somewhere in the ice fields commanding her carrier group. Hyunwoo was ready with his tactical plan. Jinwoo and his pilots waited in their fighters. The Velthron fleet came on, confident and steady. 247 massive warships moving through space like they owned it. Because they did. They had conquered 73 worlds without real resistance. They were about to learn that humanity was different. Junho watched the enemy ships pass the Neptune checkpoint. He waited until they were fully committed, surrounded by human forces they couldn't see. Then he gave the order. All ships, weapons free, attack. The ice fields around Neptune erupted with light. Hundreds of human ships powered up their engines all at once, emerging from hiding spots among the frozen rocks. For a moment, space was silent. Then the railguns fired. Metal slugs accelerated to incredible speeds, each one carrying enough kinetic energy to punch through a building. They screamed through the void toward the Velthron fleet, invisible until impact. The first barrage hit before the Velthrons even knew they were under attack. Captain Hyunwoo watched from the bridge of the Defiant as 3 Velthron cruisers simply exploded. Their shields flickered uselessly as the metal slugs passed through them like they weren't even there. The aliens had relied on those shields for 20 years. Now they were worthless. All batteries, continuous fire, Hyunwoo ordered. Don't give them time to adapt. The Defiant shuddered as its railguns fired again and again. Around them, other human ships were doing the same. The space between Neptune and the Velthron fleet became a storm of metal and destruction. On the Velthron flagship, Commander Thexlar stared at his displays in confusion. His shields showed full power. His defenses were active, yet his ships were being destroyed. The reports coming in made no sense. The primitive humans were using projectile weapons, actual metal slugs like something from a museum. How were they penetrating his shields? Return fire, he shouted at his weapons officers. Destroy these insects. The Velthron ships began launching their energy weapons. Brilliant green beams cut through space, hitting human vessels. The human shields held for a moment, then failed. Ships exploded into fire and debris. But more human ships kept coming. They weren't retreating. They weren't trying to run. They were charging forward, getting closer, accepting losses that would make any rational commander surrender. They're insane, one of Thexlar's officers said. Watching the tactical display, Lieutenant Jinwoo heard the call for fighter launch over his cockpit radio. All squadrons go, go, go. He pushed his throttle forward and his fighter shot out of Captain Myung's carrier, the Indomitable. Behind him, 14 other fighters followed in tight formation. Ahead, the massive shapes of Velthron warships loomed like dark mountains. Their point defense systems were already tracking the incoming fighters, preparing to shoot them down. Jinwoo watched the targeting computer calculate survival odds. 5%. He ignored it. Stay tight, he called to his squadron. Don't spread out until we're through their fire. The Velthron ships opened up with everything they had. Energy beams lanced through space, destroying 2 of Jinwoo's fighters instantly. He gritted his teeth and kept flying, twisting and turning, using every trick he knew. Another fighter exploded behind him. Then another. But the survivors were getting close now. So close that the Velthron guns couldn't turn fast enough to track them. Jinwoo pulled up hard and flew along the hull of a massive Velthron battleship, so close he could see the details of its armor. He released his missiles at point-blank range and banked away as they impacted, tearing holes in the alien ship's side. That's how you do it, he shouted. The remaining fighters followed his lead, attacking from positions the Velthrons had never defended because nobody had ever been crazy enough to get that close. Admiral Junho watched the battle unfold on his command displays. The ambush was working, but the price was terrible. He could see the symbols representing human ships winking out one by one as they were destroyed. Hundreds of people dying with each symbol that vanished. But the Velthrons were dying too. For the first time in 20 years, they were losing. "Admiral, enemy fleet is breaking formation," his tactical officer reported. "They're trying to regroup." "Don't let them," Junho ordered. "All ships press the attack. Keep them confused." Captain Myung stood on the bridge of the Indomitable, watching her fighters tearing into the enemy fleet. She had launched every squadron she had, knowing that many wouldn't return. War was always about math, about acceptable losses, but the faces of her pilots haunted her anyway. "Captain, Velthran destroyer coming about," her weapons officer called out. "They're targeting us directly." "Evasive maneuvers," Myung ordered. The big carrier began turning, but it was too slow. The Velthran destroyer fired, and green energy beams cut across the Indomitable's shields. Alarms screamed as the shields failed. "Return fire, all batteries." The Indomitable's railguns hammered the destroyer. At close range, the effect was devastating. Metal slugs punched through the Velthran ship again and again until it simply came apart, breaking into pieces that tumbled away into space. But the damage was done. The Indomitable was venting atmosphere. Fire control teams rushed to seal the breaches. Myung knew her ship was hurt, but it could still fight. "Keep shooting," she said quietly. Commander Thexlar finally understood what was happening. These humans were different from every other species the Velthrans had conquered. They weren't fighting to win. They were fighting to hurt the enemy as much as possible before they died. It was primitive and brutal and completely foreign to Velthran military doctrine. "Pull back to defensive formation," he ordered. "We need to establish proper battle lines." But pulling back meant turning away from the enemy, and the humans weren't giving them time. More railgun fire slammed into his ships as they tried to regroup. More human fighters swarmed around them like angry insects, too close for the big guns to target. Thexler looked at his casualty reports and felt something he had never felt in battle before. Fear. In 47 minutes of combat, he had lost 32 capital ships. 32! The Velthran Empire hadn't lost that many ships in the last 5 years combined. "Send distress signal to the main fleet," he ordered. "We need reinforcements." On the Defiant, Captain Hyunwoo saw the Velthran formation starting to break apart. They were trying to retreat, to get away from the close-range chaos. He couldn't let them. "All ships pursue," he transmitted on the command channel. "Don't let them regroup." His crew looked at him with wide eyes. Pursuing a retreating enemy wasn't standard procedure. You were supposed to let them go, preserve your own forces. But Hyunwoo remembered the 73 worlds the Velthrans had conquered. He remembered the reports of enslaved populations and destroyed civilizations. "They came here to conquer us," he said to his crew. "Let's show them what happens when prey fights back." The human fleet pressed forward, chasing the Velthrans through the ice fields of Neptune's orbit. It became a running battle, with human ships using the massive ice chunks as cover, popping out to fire railguns and then disappearing again. The Velthrans, used to open battle in clear space, couldn't adapt quickly enough. Jinwoo's fighter squadron, reduced now to just 7 ships, regrouped near the Indomitable. His fuel was low and his ammunition was almost gone, but he could see the Velthrans were running. Actually running. "Control, this is Jinwoo," he called to the carrier. "Enemy is retreating. Request permission to pursue." Captain Myung's voice came back, tired but firm. "Negative, Jinwoo. Return to ship for refuel and rearm. We'll need you for the next round." "Understood." He turned his fighter back toward the carrier, but not before taking one last look at the retreating Velthran fleet. They were leaving behind debris and bodies in the wreckage of their arrogance. The battle lasted 6 hours total. When the Velthran vanguard finally jumped to hyperspace, fleeing back to their main fleet, Admiral Junho ordered the human forces to stand down. The ice fields around Neptune were full of debris from both sides. Human and Velthran ships alike floated dead in space, their crews gone. Junho looked at the casualty reports. 63 human ships destroyed, thousands of people dead. The Indomitable was badly damaged. Several destroyers were total losses, but the Velthrans had lost more. 87 ships destroyed or disabled. Their vanguard fleet was shattered. "Get me a channel to Earth Command," Junho said to his communications officer. When the channel opened, he spoke clearly, so everyone could hear. "This is Admiral Junho. The Velthran vanguard has been repelled. I repeat, the enemy has retreated. Neptune Station is secure." Across the human fleet, on every ship in every station, people heard those words and cheered. They had done it. They had beaten the Velthrons. The empire that had conquered 73 worlds had just lost its first real battle. In her lab on Mars, Dr. Yunji listened to the reports coming in from the battle. She had been right. The Velthrons weren't prepared for an enemy that understood violence, that embraced it as a tool of war. But she also knew this was just the beginning. The Velthrons would adapt. They would send more ships. This victory, as sweet as it was, had only made the enemy angry. Soman intercepted new Velthron communications, and what she heard confirmed Yunji's fears. The Velthrons were calling for reinforcements. Massive reinforcements. 3 full armadas were being dispatched to Sol System. The message was clear. Humanity had embarrassed the Empire, and now the Empire was coming to make an example of them. She sent the translations to command and sat back in her chair, suddenly very tired. They had won the first battle, but the war was just beginning, and the next fight would be much worse. On the Defiant, Captain Hyunwoo walked through the damaged sections of his ship. Repair crews were working to fix hull breaches and replace broken systems. He passed the medical bay and saw the wounded being treated. The Velthron Empire's response came exactly 47 days after the Battle of Neptune. 3 massive armadas, each one larger than the vanguard that humanity had defeated, emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the Sol system. This time they did not broadcast surrender demands. This time, they came with one purpose: to crush the humans completely. General Taeyong stood in the command bunker deep beneath Titan's surface, watching the sensor reports with growing concern. Titan, Saturn's largest moon, was home to 3 million colonists and served as a major mining and refueling station. It was also the next target in the Velthron advance. "They're not making the same mistakes," he said to his staff. The Velthron ships were staying far apart, denying humanity another chance for a devastating ambush. Their formation was spread out across millions of kilometers. "Impossible to attack all at once, General." "We've completed the defense preparations," said his second-in-command, Colonel Minho. "All civilians are in the underground shelters. Orbital batteries are armed and ready." Taeyong nodded, but his mind was racing through scenarios. He had 10,000 soldiers on Titan. Good soldiers, well-trained and motivated, but they were facing an enemy fleet that could turn the moon's surface into molten glass from orbit. The only question was whether they could make the Velthrons pay a high enough price. Admiral Junho was coordinating the defense from his flagship, now stationed near Uranus. The human fleet had been reorganized and reinforced with every available ship, but they were still outnumbered 3-1. Worse, the Velthrons had adapted their tactics. "They're using standoff weapons now," Captain Hyunwoo reported from the Defiant, "launching missiles from extreme range before our railguns can reach them. They learned from Neptune." "Then we teach them another lesson," Juno said. "We can't win by fighting their way. We have to keep doing things they don't expect." He pulled up the tactical display and began issuing orders. The human fleet would split into smaller groups, using hit-and-run tactics instead of direct confrontation. They would lay minefields in the Velthron's path. They would pretend to retreat, then turn and attack. Every dirty trick humanity had learned in thousands of years of warfare would be used. Captain Myung commanded a small battle group of 6 ships, including her repaired carrier, Indomitable. Her mission was to harass the northern flank of the Velthron advance, to draw ships away from the main battle. It was dangerous work, but she volunteered for it. "Captain, we have contacts," her sensor officer called out. 12 Velthron destroyers breaking formation to pursue us." "Good," Myung said. "That's 12 ships not attacking our main fleet. Take us into the asteroid field. Let's see if they follow." The Indomitable dove toward a dense cluster of asteroids, her escorts following close behind. The Velthron destroyers came after them, their commanders eager to destroy the impudent humans who had bloodied their vanguard. What the Velthrons didn't know was that the asteroid field was full of mines. Thousands of them hidden among the rocks waiting. When the Velthron ships entered the field, the mines activated. Explosions blossomed throughout the asteroid cluster, catching the alien ships by surprise. 3 destroyers were destroyed immediately. The others tried to back out, but Myung had turned her ships around and was charging at them with railguns blazing. "Hit them while they're confused," she ordered. The brief battle ended with 7 Velthron destroyers destroyed and 3 damaged badly enough that they had to retreat. Myung's group lost 1 escort ship, but the trade was worthwhile. Every enemy ship they destroyed was one less threat to Earth. But victories like that were becoming harder to achieve. The Velthrons were learning. They sent out scout drones ahead of their main forces. They checked every asteroid field for ambushes. They stopped pursuing human ships that tried to lure them away. The war was becoming a grind, a battle of attrition, and humanity was on the losing side of the numbers. On Titan, the Velthron assault began with orbital bombardment. Energy beams from space struck the surface installations, destroying communication towers, power plants, and defense batteries. General Taeyong watched from the bunker as his outer defenses were systematically destroyed. "Sir, they're landing troops," Colonel Minho reported. 3 landing sites on the northern plains. How many? At least 5,000. Maybe more coming. Taeyong considered his options. The Velthrons expected him to defend the main colony, to sit in his bunkers and wait for them to dig him out. Instead, he was going to attack. "Minho, take the 1st and 3rd battalions," he ordered. "Hit the western landing site before they can establish a perimeter. I'll take the 2nd and 4th against the eastern site. Leave the northern site alone for now." "Sir, they'll expect us to defend, not attack." "Exactly," Taeyong said, smiling grimly. "We're going to teach them that humans don't play by their rules." The battle for Titan became the bloodiest ground combat the galaxy had seen in centuries. Taeyong's soldiers emerged from underground tunnels, hitting the Velthron landing forces from unexpected directions. The fighting was close and brutal, with neither side able to use heavy weapons without risking their own troops. The Velthrons were taller and stronger than humans, but they had no experience with this kind of warfare. Their military doctrine was based on overwhelming force and technological superiority. They didn't know how to fight an enemy that used dirty tricks, that hid in shadows, that refused to stand still and be shot. Colonel Minho led his troops in a flanking attack that caught an entire Velthron company by surprise. The humans used smoke grenades, flashbangs, anything to confuse and disorient the enemy. Then they hit them with sustained fire from multiple directions. The Velthrons, unable to see clearly or coordinate properly, fell back in disarray. "Keep pushing," Minho shouted to his soldiers. "Make them pay for every meter." In orbit above Titan, the Velthron fleet watched the ground battle with growing frustration. Their troops were supposed to establish control quickly, but instead they were bogged down in close-quarters combat that negated their technological advantages. The fleet commander ordered more troops deployed, but that just gave General Taeyong more targets. Specialist Hana was a combat medic attached to Taeyong's command unit. She had been in the military for 6 years, but this was her first real combat. She treated wounded soldiers in makeshift aid stations, working by flashlight while explosions shook the ground above them. Between treating casualties, she recorded video messages documenting the battle. "This is Specialist Hana, 2nd Battalion, Titan Defense Force," she spoke into her recorder. "Day 3 of the ground battle. We've lost 230 soldiers, but the Velthrons have lost more. We're showing them that humans don't give up. We don't surrender. Even when we're outnumbered and outgunned, we fight." She didn't know it at the time, but her recordings would be broadcast across neutral star systems throughout the galaxy. For the first time, other species would see the mighty Velthron Empire struggling against determined resistance. For the first time, the conquered worlds would wonder if maybe, just maybe, the Empire could be beaten. Far above the fighting, a different kind of battle was taking place. Colonel Minho, who had also trained as a pilot, had volunteered to lead a desperate mission. A Velthron capital ship was maintaining low orbit over Titan, providing fire support to the ground troops. Minho and a small team boarded a shuttle and launched toward it, pretending to be a supply run. "Sir, they're hailing us," his co-pilot said. "Ignore it," Minho replied. "Keep flying like we don't care." "Act stupid." The shuttle approached the massive Velthron ship, and incredibly they weren't shot down. The Velthrons must have assumed they were refugees fleeing the battle, not worth wasting ammunition on. When they got close enough, Minho changed course sharply and rammed the shuttle directly into the ship's hangar bay. The impact was violent. Minho and his team, strapped into crash seats, survived. The shuttle's front section was demolished, but they could still exit through the rear hatch. They emerged into the Velthron hangar with weapons ready. "Go, go, go," Minho shouted. The Velthrons inside were completely unprepared for boarders. They had never been boarded before. Nobody had ever been insane enough to ram a ship deliberately just to get inside. Minho's team moved through the hangar, setting explosive charges on ammunition stores and fuel tanks. The Velthrons tried to respond, but the fighting was inside their own ship, in tight corridors where their size worked against them. Charges set, one of Minho's soldiers reported. 30 seconds. They ran back to the hangar and jumped into a Velthron shuttle, not even knowing how to fly it properly. But Minho figured out the basic controls and launched just as the charges detonated. The explosions tore through the Velthron capital ship, starting fires and causing secondary detonations. The ship began losing altitude, falling toward Titan's surface. Minho's captured shuttle was damaged but functional. He guided it back to human lines, crash landing in the northern plains. When he and his team climbed out, General Taeyong was there waiting. That was the stupidest, most reckless thing I've ever seen, Taeyong said. Yes, sir, Minho replied, grinning. It was also brilliant. Well done. The battle for Titan continued for 18 more days. The Velthrons eventually won, forcing the human defenders into the deepest bunkers. The Velthron Emperor's fleet emerged from hyperspace like a storm made of metal and fury. 400 capital ships, twice as many support vessels, and the Emperor's personal flagship, a massive dreadnought called the Eternal Dominion. It was the largest military force ever assembled by the Velthron Empire, meant to end human resistance once and for all. Admiral Junho stood on the bridge of the Resolute, watching the enemy fleet approach. Around him, his staff worked quietly, their faces tight with tension. They all knew what was coming. The final battle. Win or lose, this would decide humanity's fate. How many ships do we have? He asked his tactical officer. 147 combat-capable vessels, Admiral. Another 38 damaged but still able to fight if necessary. Less than 200 ships against more than 600. The math was clear. If they fought this battle the traditional way, humanity would lose. Dr. Yunji, Junho said, turning to where the xenopsychology expert stood at a console. What's your assessment of the Emperor? Yunji had been studying intercepted communications for weeks, building a psychological profile of the Velthron Emperor. He's proud, Admiral, arrogant. He believes Velthron superiority is a fact of the universe. We've challenged that belief, and it's made him angry. He won't just try to defeat us. He'll try to humiliate us. Good, Junho said. Anger makes people predictable. He pulled up a display showing Earth and its orbital space. The planet was surrounded by defense stations, minefields, and the remains of Luna Base, now converted into a massive weapons platform. Everything humanity could build, steal, or improvise had been brought to defend their homeworld. We're going to let them come to us, Junho explained to his officers, all the way to Earth orbit. We'll make them fight in our space where we control the battlefield. Captain Myung, whose carrier group had been pulled back to join the main fleet, spoke up. Admiral, if we let them reach Earth, we risk bombardment. They won't bombard Earth, Dr. Yunji said confidently. The Emperor wants to occupy Earth, not destroy it. A burned planet is worthless. He wants to parade his victory, to show the galaxy that he personally defeated the species that dared to resist. Then we'll give him his battle, Junho said, and we'll make sure it's one the galaxy never forgets. The Velthron fleet advanced slowly toward Earth, taking their time, demonstrating their power. They broadcast messages to the human fleet, demanding surrender, promising mercy if humanity submitted immediately. Admiral Junho's response was broadcast on all frequencies, simple and clear. No surrender. Come and take it. Emperor Thexelar himself watched the human message from his throne aboard the Eternal Dominion. The Emperor was ancient by Velthron standards, having ruled for 300 years. He had overseen the conquest of 60 of the 73 worlds his empire now controlled. He had never personally led a fleet into battle before because he had never needed to. Defiant to the end, he said to his commanders, "It doesn't matter. Their courage is meaningless against superior force. Advance the fleet. Prepare to engage." Lieutenant Jinwoo sat in his fighter cockpit, strapped in and ready for launch. Around him, his squadron waited in the Indomitable's hangar. They had lost so many pilots over the past months that most of the faces were new to him. Young men and women who had volunteered knowing they would probably die. "Squadron leaders, this is Captain Myung." The carrier's commander spoke over the comm. "Today we fight for Earth. Today we show the galaxy what humans are made of. Whatever happens, make them pay for every meter of space. Make them remember us." "Yes, ma'am," Jinwoo replied. He looked at his squadron through the hangar's windows. "You heard the captain. Stay alive as long as you can. Kill as many as you can. And if you're going to die, take some of them with you." The first engagement began near Mars orbit. The Velthron fleet met the forward elements of the human defense and space erupted into violence. Railguns fired, missiles launched, energy beams cut through the void. Ships on both sides exploded into debris. Captain Hyunwoo commanded the Defiant in a desperate fighting retreat. His orders were to slow the enemy advance, to make them pay for every kilometer. He succeeded, but at terrible cost. The ships under his command were being destroyed one by one. "Sir, the warrior is gone," his tactical officer reported. "The Challenger is venting atmosphere. The Vigilant has lost engines. Tell Vigilant to go to emergency power and ram the nearest enemy cruiser," Hyunwoo ordered. "If they're going down, they're taking someone with them." It was brutal mathematics, trading ships and lives to buy time. But it was working. The Velthron advance was slower than they expected, their formation disrupted by human ships that refused to die quietly. General Tae-young, who had been evacuated from Titan before it fell, now commanded Earth's ground defenses. He watched the space battle from a bunker in Geneva, knowing that if the fleet failed, his soldiers would be next. Millions of troops were dug in across Earth, ready to fight in the streets if necessary. Colonel Minho stood beside him, studying the tactical displays. "The fleet is taking heavy losses. They're buying us time," Tae-young replied. "If the fleet breaks, the Emperor will try to land troops. That's when we show him what house-to-house fighting looks like. He could just bomb us from orbit. Dr. Yunji doesn't think he will. He wants to conquer Earth intact to prove his superiority." Tae-young looked at his old friend. "But if I'm wrong, if they start orbital bombardment, I want you to take command. Someone has to survive to keep fighting." "Sir, that's an order, Colonel." The space battle moved closer to Earth. The Velthron Emperor watched from his flagship, growing increasingly frustrated. The humans should have broken by now. They should have surrendered or at least retreated to buy time. Instead, they fought like cornered animals, desperate and dangerous. "Damage report," he demanded. 47 ships lost, Emperor. 63 damaged. The humans are using ramming attacks, suicide runs, anything to slow our advance. Unacceptable. Thexlar stood from his throne. "No more caution. All ships, maximum speed. We crush them here and now." The Velthron fleet surged forward, abandoning their careful formation in favor of overwhelming force. It was exactly what Admiral Junho had been waiting for. "Now," he said quietly, "activate the minefield." Thousands of mines that had been disguised as debris suddenly powered up. They had been placed throughout Earth's orbital space over the past 2 months, hidden among the wreckage of destroyed stations. When the Velthron fleet rushed forward, they rushed into a trap. The mines detonated in waves, catching the enemy ships while they were bunched together. Explosions rippled through the Velthron formation, destroying dozens of ships and damaging hundreds more. The Emperor's perfect advance dissolved into chaos. "All ships attack," Shunyu broadcast. "Hit them while they're confused." The human fleet, which had been retreating steadily, suddenly turned and charged. Every ship, every weapon, everything they had left. It was a final desperate gamble. If it failed, Earth was lost. Captain Myung launched her fighters, including Lieutenant Jinwoo's squadron. "Give them hell," she said simply. Jinwoo's squadron dove into the chaos of the main battle. Velthron ships were everywhere, burning and exploding and trying to reform their lines. He picked his target, a heavy cruiser that was firing on the Resolute, and pushed his throttle to maximum. "I'm going for the bridge," he called to his wingman. "Cover me! Right behind you!" They screamed through defensive fire, losing 3 fighters before they reached the cruiser. Jinwoo released his entire payload of missiles at point-blank range and banked hard. The missiles struck the cruiser's command section, and the big ship began to drift, its bridge destroyed. But the victory was short-lived. Velthron fighters swarmed toward them. Jinwoo's wingman was destroyed, then another squadron member. They were being cut apart. "All fighters disengage," Captain Myung's voice came through the comm. "Return to carrier." "Negative," Jinwoo replied, watching the battle rage around him. "We're not done yet." He saw the Emperor's flagship, the Eternal Dominion, in the center of the enemy formation. It was massive, bristling with weapons, but its shields were down. The mines had damaged them. For just a few seconds, it was vulnerable. "This is Jinwoo to all available fighters," he broadcast. "The Emperor's flagship is exposed. Attack, attack, attack!" Every human fighter that could respond turned toward the Eternal Dominion. It was suicide, flying into the teeth of the enemy fleet, but it was also a chance they might never get again. Aboard the Eternal Dominion, Emperor Thexlar felt his ship shudder as human fighters attacked. Destroy them, he screamed at his crew. Kill them all! But the fighters kept coming, releasing missiles, firing guns, even ramming into his ship's weapon systems. It was insanity. It was desperation. It was everything the Velthrons had never faced before. Captain Myung watched Jinwoo's attack from the bridge of the Indomitable. Her carrier was damaged and burning, but still fighting. She saw the fighters swarming the Emperor's flagship like angry insects, dying one by one but inflicting terrible damage. Captain, we're losing power, her engineering officer reported. We can't maintain orbit. Myung looked at the Emperor's ship. It was wounded but still fighting. Still dangerous. And the Indomitable was dying anyway. Set collision course, she ordered quietly. Her crew stared at her. Captain,